Saturday, the 19th of February 1982, Mishpatim.
We welcome, especially this morning, visitors to the SAJ who have been brought here by members. I'm sure there are other visitors who came in unexpectedly, but we welcome everybody, but particularly this is new members Shabbat. It's been designated by Mayor Koch as new members Shabbat. West 86th Street has been, just for the day, renamed New Members 86th Street. But of course, the designation New Members is a misnomer. We're very good at misnomers here. I mean, take the Society for the Advancement of Judaism. Well, all our 350 families, more or less, we've been advancing Judaism for the last 60 years. And people pass by us every day and think it's a bank. A branch of Le'u, with headquarters in Switzerland. Bank Leumi Switzerland, that's what we are. We are a Society of Advancement of Judaism. New members are members who already signed on the dotted line, huh? Right, that's a new member. So if it were really new members Shabbat, we would be speaking to people who already converted, already signed on the dotted line. What we're really saying is we are expressing the wish as already the reality, you see. We're hoping that you will become new members. But we know from past experience that that's a whole different kettle of fish. But I want right now to tell you that whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your background, I know nothing of you, and I see many faces this morning in synagogue that I don't recognize. You're most welcome here. And I paid you the highest tribute I could by having our services conducted this morning exactly as they would have been conducted even if it had not been New Members Shabbat. I mislead you not. The SAJ conducted its Sabbath morning service today more or less as we conduct them every week. It was a special Shabbat. From another point of view, I would like to say we brought out a second Torah in honor of the new members, but it happened to be Shabbat Shkalim today, a special Sabbath, one of a group of special Sabbaths which precedes Passover. This particular extra reading happens to deal with a very ancient custom in ancient Israel. Announcements were made on the first of the month of Adar, which is the last month of the year. Messengers went out to all the Jewish communities in the diaspora that this was the time to send in their contributions to, it's funny, whenever Jews get together, it's always fundraising. This is fundraising Sabbath, and the prophetic reading also dealt with the same theme. The temple in Jerusalem, which was the central spiritual focus of the life of the Jews during the Second Commonwealth, which ended when it was destroyed in the year 70, was supported by gifts from the Jewish people at large. And the first of Adar was a kind of 15th of April. It was a time when monies had to be collected. There were no banks as we know them in those days, and in fact we know that the shekalim were put in boxes and were sent by sea to the temple in Jerusalem, where they were all emptied into a room. I noticed in the newspaper yesterday that the treasurer of was it some kind of a church? I forget which denomination, so I will not even mention the possibility of a nation. I mean, just think of the temptation involved in those days. You know, you had a room in the temple, a lishka, a massive room where they just shoveled all these gold coins. And then the priests just sort of shoved a hand in a hole in the wall to hear what they needed for the sack. The mind boggles at possibilities. At any rate, this is what happened, and we know as early as the pre-Christian era, there was the Roman writer Cicero. One of the books that he has left us behind is a legal defense of a Roman procurator who was in fact cashiered, was in fact brought back to Rome and indicted for having helped himself to some of the boxes before they got to the temple. And to the eternal credit of Roman law, he was found guilty, which he was, and was banished. And this is a very interesting story. I think it took place before the beginning of the Christian era and is indicative of the Roman law, but also indirectly it tells us how avidly Jews sent these contributions each year. Those of you who are in the synagogue for the first time this morning remind me very much of those people in the ancient world who gave. You're here, obviously, not just because your friends said, well, why did you come to synagogue? Because somewhere deep down you have a feeling you would like to become part of the Jewish people. You'd like to belong. You don't know whether you should belong here or anywhere else, but you come here at least to see what goes on here. And it would have been dishonest for us to put on a special show for you, and we didn't. And even what I'm doing now is not a special show. This is a teaching period. A teaching period in which we all try to learn more about what it means to be Jewish, where we come from. And what I'm thinking about now is, where do you all come from? Some of you have got to be lapsed Orthodox Jews. I can see it from the pain on your faces as you sing the songs which you know so well, but which you look as if you haven't sung for the last 40 years. In other words, this may be the first time you've set foot in synagogue ever since you were bar mitzvah, maybe, or married, maybe. Or you've had thoughts about coming back, but you know, you have to make a living and you've been busy on Saturdays. So we have on this side of the spectrum people who, on some level, may even have some sense of condescension. My God, you're saying to yourselves, look at what they only miss out. Only one psalm instead of 50. No Mishaberachs this morning. Oh, what was only missing? Nothing like my grandfather's synagogue or my father's synagogue. The other extreme, denominationally speaking, we may have Reform Jews who are in a state of nervous paralysis at this point because of the amount of Hebrew in the service. This is a serious problem. I must be honest with you at the outset. We expect our members to attempt to rise to our Hebraic level rather than expect us to get down to theirs. This is an issue that we fought long and well, and I think finally decided that we pay no respect to you whom we would like to join us by trying to address you at the level of spirituality and knowledge of Judaism where you are now. But that instead we set before you some kind of an ideal that we are striving towards and hope that you will join us in that quest. And let me say first and foremost to those of you who have been sitting here speechless because you don't know any Hebrew and expected that a Reconstructionist service will be a magnificent libretto set to music or something of that order, in English of course, that we have an ongoing program for teaching those who know no Hebrew, at least to be able to read enough Hebrew to follow the prayer book. And you are cordially invited to participate in that class. We would love this place to be the place where you learned how to read Hebrew if you have no knowledge of that. If you want to go on and take an ulpan and learn how to converse in modern Hebrew and go to Israel, that's fine. We're talking about beginnings. We're talking about very modest beginnings. We think it's the birthright of every Jew to be able to at least read Hebrew, to be able to come to the bima and recite a bracha over the Torah, to be able to recite any kind of bracha, not from phonetic English, not because you learned it off by heart or from a tape, but that you actually recognize an aleph as an aleph, and a bet as a bet, and a kamatz as a kamatz, and a patach as a patach. And we would like to help you to achieve that level. We don't feel that we'd be doing you any service, nor indeed paying you any respect, if we try to build a synagogue service around your limited knowledge or lack of knowledge of Judaism. We respect you much too much to go to that level, and therefore we say we'd like to teach you Hebrew to let you experience what happens when you can read the actual words. And there's a whole gradation from there. You read Hebrew, you learn to translate it, you progress from the prayer book and from simpler prayers to the Bible maybe, to Midrash, to the Talmud, to medieval Jewish Hebrew philosophy, to Jewish poetry, to modern Hebrew, to a leading article, an editorial in Haaretz or Yediot Ma'ariv. So a whole life ahead of you. We'd like to help you to the best of our ability over the first few steps. I repeat, I believe it is every Jew's birthright and heritage to be able to read the Hebrew language. We're not faced with the problem that the Pope was faced with Latin and the Roman Church. No group of Catholics today speak modern Latin, whereas 3 million Jews speak modern Hebrew. And modern Hebrew has become a revitalizing effect throughout the Jewish world in terms of literature, poetry, belles lettres, journalism. A cultural adventure lies ahead of those of you who have no Hebrew background. We'd like to turn you on to Hebrew. Marshall McLuhan once said, "The medium is the message. Of no cultural reality is that statement more true than of the Hebrew language. The medium is the message. You come across words like Torah, you come across words like Rachamim, you come across words like Ahava, Chesed, Emet. The medium is the message. In the very learning of the Hebrew, you learn what Jewish values are about. You learn the difference in ratio between the verbs in Greek and Latin to kill and to murder, and the thousands of different designations of weapons. A situation which unfortunately we Jews in some respects have been forced into ourselves today in matters of self-respect. The handbook on how to take a tank to pieces in modern Hebrew is a remarkable phenomenon. Hebrew is heavy, classical Hebrew is heavy in ethical concepts and words. We don't have to go very far when we're declining Hebrew verbs to find verbs that represent cultural values cherished for thousands of years by the Jews. Nouns which speak of what Jews have yearned and dreamed of for thousands of years. And so it's not a question of learning a language, it's learning a way of life. To this day, a good Hebrew teacher can teach children everything there is to know about Judaism from a Tanakh, from a Hebrew Bible. You don't have to use any other textbook. If you know your Tanakh, if you know your Bible, if you know the law, the prophets and the writings, that's enough. The words themselves, in their historical evolution, speak of the strivings of Jewish people since time immemorial. Some of you may be disgruntled conservative Jews who've had a falling out with your rabbi, and you're coming to another synagogue to have another falling out with your rabbi. We specialize in that here. Honesty, there's no need to applaud. There are other subtle ways of acknowledging what I'm saying, or rather more subtle ways. We're not great believers in appealing to the disgruntled. I remember a former colleague of mine who screamed at one of his departing congregants who was resigning because of something he said in his sermon, "I don't give a damn which shul you don't daven in." But there are some conservative Jews who are not satisfied with what conservative Judaism offers them. There are some Reform Jews who are not satisfied with what Reform Jews offer them. There are Orthodox Jews who do not find happiness in what Orthodox Judaism offers them. And there are Reconstructionist Jews who don't find what Reconstructionism offers something that's good for them. We have a whole spectrum then. People who were once Orthodox and lapsed and are sort of trying to come back, maybe because their children are beginning to ask them questions. That's the hard period for Jewish men and women who were brought up in an Orthodox Jewish background, when their children get to the age when they have to start being registered in a Hebrew school. You can't play the village game anymore. You have to make hard decisions. It's going to be a Hebrew school, so where's it going to be? What kind of Hebrew school? How many hours? What's the content? What kind of teachers? You can put it off when the kid is 6 months old or a year old, maybe even to 3 or 4 years old, but first grade already is getting too late. You have to make a big decision. Of course, some people in this day and age believe in raising their children without the benefit of a Jewish school or synagogue. Sometimes 6 months before Bar Mitzvah they panic and they come to us, and we don't help them. I'm very happy and proud to tell you that we have standards. Bar Mitzvah at this institution is a byway, it's a way station. It's not an end, it's not a goal. It's part of an ongoing experience of Jewish education which terminates the year before the children go to high school, to a college. That is to say, they graduate from our high school after an intensive program. Bar Mitzvah is simply a way stage in that experience. And they don't read their parashah from phonetics. They learn the cantillation, the notes, you know, those little squiggly things. And they stand here in full awareness, boys and girls, bar and bat mitzvah, that Jewish education is serious. And that we don't even expect them to continue. It's taken for granted that at bar mitzvah, at the age of 13, when the child moves from the infantile mode of understanding reality to a fully mature adult understanding of reality, that is the most crucial time for Jewish education. So here is another Reconstructionist theme. My own judgment, after having been a Jewish educator for almost, forget about that, is that the earlier a child starts to become Jewish, the longer he stays with us. All the statistics indicate that the earlier children are registered in a meaningful Jewish program, the longer they stay with us, and the more Hebrew courses they register for at college. And that the more serious education is the high school program. And if I had to give up one or the other, I would much rather give up the pre-13 education. I don't want to give up either. But if it really were an issue that we couldn't afford to do both, the kind of Jewish education that takes place when a child is in adolescence, when they are searching for values and meaning and purpose, is the crucial time. We are losing thousands of young Jews who are so essentially religious because of their background, to the Hare Krishna, to well, we can't say we're losing them to Est, I have to be very careful. We're hoping they come out of Est improved. As they say in Yiddish, vergrößert und verbessert. But you know the number of cults that are around which bleed the Jewish people white. Adolescents, with all the enthusiasm and idealism, looking for roots, and our Jewish roots not available because they never had them. So wherever you come from, you are welcome. But of course, there's a whole different perspective here. Some of you undoubtedly have a background, some of you have some background, some of you have a different kind of background, and some of you have no background at all. But all of you, I assume, are here because you want to learn. What I want to do is very briefly say a few words about the service that you have experienced here this morning. And I'll start at the beginning. I'd like you to open your prayer books. I'm not going to do all of it in detail, but if we start at least some of it in some kind of detail, you may get some kind of a feel for what is going on here. Apart from the fact that men and women sit together here, which is, of course, a central theme of Reconstructionism, the equality of men and women in religious matters, and apart from the fact that we have omitted a great deal, and an Orthodox Jew might find much to complain about what we have omitted. We don't repeat the Amidah, we don't say the whole of Musaf. Up to the moment that I got up to speak, no Jew in the world who has a traditional background would have failed to notice what was going on. I mention that because very often we talk of Reconstructionism, we're too quick to say wherein we differ from other people. I prefer to speak of what we have in common with other Jews. We have in common with other Jews a love for the Jewish language. We have in common with other Jews a love for Jewish tradition. We have in common with other Jews a love for Jewish ritual. And one of the reasons why you may have been perplexed to see this blue traditional prayer book introduced into our service this morning, from which we had a psalm, one psalm, not all of the psalms, is because in recent years, many of us, myself in particular, have felt that much as I admired the revolution that was perpetrated by Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan, by bringing Reconstructionism to the notice of the American Jewish people and also to the world at large, all revolutionaries tend to make mistakes. We throw out some of the babies with the bathwater. And I find that our Reconstructionist prayer book today, wonderful though it may have been 50, 60 years ago when it first came out, no longer satisfies our needs. There is a deep hunger throughout the world today for traditional formulations. I'm sure it hasn't escaped you. It has taken those who study religion completely by surprise. We do not believe in being dogmatic. We're not ashamed that we changed. We're not ashamed that we go back. There are times in life when progression means moving away from the past, and there are times in life when progress means having the honesty to admit that you are wrong and going back to where you came from. We're not going back with any kind of slavish dogmatism to the past. We're going back to the past to learn. We take it very seriously. Some of you must have been watching Leonard Bernstein conducting Beethoven on Monday nights. I don't think you'd want to watch all Beethoven's 9 symphonies conducted by Bernstein in one go. It's hard enough, for some of us, to experience the intensity that he gives to the conducting of one of those marvelous creations. By the same token, we feel that the Psalms are too beautiful to be read by rote. We read one Psalm instead of 30. We may be wrong. Maybe we'll develop a spirituality in years to come, so we'll be able to read more than one Psalm. Most of the service, up to the point where the teaching takes place, most of the service is either direct quotation of chunks from our Bible, whole chunks lifted right out of the Bible and placed into the prayer book, like the Psalms, or mosaics from individual verses pulled out of the Bible and made into pretty patterns. So much did the Jews revere the Torah. The scrolls that we took out today, 2 in honor of Shabbat Shekalim, out of respect to the Torah, we don't roll it up, even though the Parashat Shekalim is only a few paragraphs ahead of where we were today. Respect is shown to the Torah. You don't read 2 readings from the same Torah. You have 2 Torot. You read 1 reading from each. This is again something that links us with time immemorial. In ancient Palestine, over 2,000 years ago, the central act of worship on Shabbat was the taking out of the Sefer Torah, the opening of the Sefer Torah by the Rabbi, and the interpretation and commentary on the Torah. As a matter of fact, if we go back to the earliest times, there were no set readings. There were no sidrot. There was not a Shabbat Bereshit and a Shabbat Noach and a Shabbat Lech Lecha. The Rabbi, and the word means teacher, not priest. The word means teacher. The Rabbi simply opened the Torah, the scroll, at a point where he, obviously for whatever had been happening with him that week, felt that he wanted to talk. He read the text and he commented. You may well ask why, thousands of years later, we are still following the same pattern. And the simplest answer I can think of is we found nothing better to replace it. That is to say, the Torah, which we regard as the sacred myth of the Jewish people, possesses certain qualities so that the more we read it, the more we learn from it. Take something like the chapter in the book of Genesis which deals with the binding of Isaac. We read that every single year, both when it comes to its turn in the weekly sequence and on Rosh Hashanah. Every year when we wrestle with the meaning of that text, we arrive at new insights. The Torah, on a very important level, may best be described. I should have a little light next to me which keeps on flashing, Reconstructionist, because some people in our congregation, unfortunately, feel that unless we're giving commercials every 5 minutes, nobody knows what we're doing. Everything that we're doing is Reconstructionism. The very essence of our service, the fact that we use the prayer book as our slave and not as our master, that we select, that we use it as an anthology, the very modality in which I'm speaking now, the very, I don't know what it is, but anyway, the very way in which I am discussing tradition is quintessentially Reconstructionist. I don't feel that it is improved by having a stamp. Some people feel more comfortable if they have a brand name. In fact, this has become such a craze in America that even children, I understand, have their diapers stamped with, not Reconstructionists, but whoever made the diapers. Have you noticed that in America, people have a terrible need to have everything defined? Names which are foreign sounding have to be given a parenthesis so that nobody will not be able to pronounce, what's that unpronounceable wine, Fazia Battaglia, God forbid. I bet I got that wrong, actually. And it's curious, actually, from a cultural point of view, why do people wear blue jeans with the names of different manufacturers on? I mean, I could understand somebody wearing blue jeans with their own name. But why would one want to wear blue jeans with somebody else's name? Fashion, but that doesn't answer it. By the way, let us have yet one more introduction to Reconstructionism. The Rabbi doesn't mind if you put your hand up and ask a question respectfully. Somebody said fashion, but that doesn't really answer it. Yes, why do people want their tuchuses covered with other people's names? Yes?
Because this demonstrates that you have enough extra income to spend $50 for a pair of pants that only cost $9 to make.
That also explains something, but I think blue jeans with names on their back are, as Freud would say, overdetermined. I think there must be yet another reason why. I'm interested in why the name. You could have a star, or you could have, I cost $50 on each buttock, or something like that. But why the name? We feel very proud if somehow something can be identified, no? I don't know, I'll come back to it again. That's something else we reconstructionists are not afraid of saying. If we don't know, we say we don't know. We don't know all the answers. As a matter of fact, sometimes I think that what I do most from this pulpit is to ask questions. Page 4 in our prayer book. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your tabernacles, O Israel. You may be interested to know that this verse is a verse that comes straight from the Bible, straight from the Torah, comes in fact from the book of Numbers, and it was in fact said not by a Jew, not by a Hebrew, but by an idolater, which I find curiously interesting in its reflection of the approach of the Jew to an idea. If it's good, then let's have it in Hebrew in our prayer book. This is the sentence, Numbers 24:5. If you have your Chumashim in front of you, although I saw Paul assiduously collecting them, and let's not deliver them out right now, but at least those of you who have a Chumash, Numbers 24, verse 5, here is the background. And incidentally, one of the reasons, not one of the reasons, the verses that are taken by those who created the liturgy and put together in mosaic form invariably carry with them resonances of their original context. I want to stress that point very carefully. If a verse is taken from the Bible and put into a prayer, I'm not talking of when we recite a whole psalm. I'm not talking of when we recite the story of the Akedah, which Orthodox Jews recite every morning, totally. I'm talking of when separate verses are taken from the Bible, by which I mean not just the 5 books of Moses, but the law and the prophets and the writings also, to get the full flavor of what the author of that prayer was about, or the authors of that prayer were about. You have to go to the original context, because the overtones, the nuances and the resonances are there. It's like a note in music, which has not just the note, but also the resonances with it. On page 678, it's verse 5. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov bishknotecha Yisrael. Here is the story in brief. The Israelites were marching through the desert and approaching the land of Moab. And the king of Moab, whose name was Balak, wanted to stop the advance of the Israelites. In the modern world, he'd have asked for some airplanes or bombs from America. In the olden days, people believed that words were as powerful as bombs. And there were certain professional people who were professional cursers, specialists in cursing, PhDs in cursing, masters of cursing. And they were so powerful that for a modest fee, they would stand on the top of a mountain and pronounce a curse on your enemies, and the belief was that your enemies would just wilt. It never got to that point in the case of the man who was chosen to curse the Israelites, whose name was Bilam, because when Bilam got up to the top of the mountain from which he was to curse the children of Israel, and he looked down and saw the tents, they were so neat, the beds were made so tidily, the blankets would have pleased the heart of any sergeant major. Bilam was overwhelmed by what he saw, the children so clean and well groomed and dressed, and the men and women going about their lives in peace and in love. Bilam, who went up to the top of the mountain to curse, was overwhelmed by the reality of what he saw and couldn't curse but instead blessed. He looked down and he said, "How wonderful are thy tents, O Jacob." And when we remember the context from which this sentence comes, we can see that the first sentence of a Jewish act of worship, which is common to Jews all over the world, the Jews who daven at the Western Wall start their services with Matovu. Morning services always commence with Matovu, the words of a Gentile. But the context means that we must acknowledge reality. Denial is unwholesome in religious life. We have a moral obligation to tell it like it is in religious life. The one thing that religion should not be is phony. The one thing that religion should not be is hypocritical. The one thing that religion should not be is saying one thing and doing something else. The one thing religion should not be is dissimulation, pulling the wool over people's eyes. And no more powerful verse could have been chosen to begin with than the verse from the mouth of a Gentile who wanted to curse but couldn't deny the reality of what he saw. And he says, "Look, my dear friends, you can have your check back. The fact of the matter is that these people don't deserve to be cursed. They're good, they're wholesome, and they're clean living people. Why should anyone want to curse them?" The second verse comes from Psalm 5, number 8. I'm going to read that psalm. Most of you only know this sentence because of its context here. "Va'ani berov chastacha avo veitecha, eshtacha ve'elhicha kodshcha biratecha. As for me, in the abundance of thy loving kindness will I come into thy house. I will worship towards thy holy temple in the fear of thee." Now here is a perfect example of what I was telling you before. The Matovu is a prayer. You can see it has 2, 4, 6, 7 lines. And yet it's a mosaic. It consists of verses, each one of which is taken from a different part of our Bible. The first verse is from the book of Numbers. The second verse is from Psalm 5, verse 8. And as I read the psalm, I want you to think about the relationship between the context of this psalm and the context of what I just told you from the book of Numbers. Psalm 5. "Give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my meditation. Hearken to the voice of my cry, my King and my God, for unto thee do I pray. Lord, in the morning shalt thou hear my voice, and in the morning will I order my prayer to thee, and will look forward. For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness. Evil shall not sojourn with thee. The boaster shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Thou destroyest them that speak falsehood. The Lord abhorreth the man of blood and of deceit. But as for me, in the abundance of thy loving kindness will I come into thy house. I will bow down toward thy holy temple in the fear of thee. Lord, lead me in thy righteousness because of them that lie in wait for me. Make thy way straight before my face. There is no sincerity in their mouth. Their inward part is a yawning gulf. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They make smooth their tongue. Hold them guilty, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them down in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against thee. So shall all those that take refuge in thee rejoice. They shall ever shout for joy, and thou shalt shelter them. Let them also that love thy name exult in thee, for thou dost bless the righteous, O Lord. Thou dost encompass him with favor as with a shield. I want to give one more example before I ask for discussion on this. The next verse. Adonai ahavti me'on beitecha. O Lord, I love the habitation of thy house. U'mekom mishkan kavodecha, and the place where thy glory dwelleth. This is from Psalm 26, verse 8. Judge me, O Lord. I have walked in mine integrity. I have trusted in the Lord without wavering. Examine me, O Lord. Try me. Test my reins and my heart. For thy mercy is before mine eyes, and I have walked in thy truth. I have not sat with men of falsehood, neither will I go in with dissemblers. I hate the gathering of evildoers. I will not sit with the wicked. I will wash my hands in innocency. So will I compass thine altar, O Lord, that I may make the voice of thanksgiving to be heard, and tell of all thy wondrous works. Lord, I love the habitation of thy house, and the place where thy glory dwelleth. Gather not my soul with sinners, nor my life with men of blood, in whose hands is craftiness, and their right hand is full of bribes. But as for me, I will walk in mine integrity. Redeem me and be gracious unto me. My foot standeth in an even place. In the congregations will I bless the Lord. I'm not going to go any further. The material is quite evident. What is going on here? We have 3 verses. I gave you the context of the first, the context of the second, and the context of the third. Clearly, the authors of the liturgy felt that the impact was going to be much more powerful if in a culture for which the Bible was known inside out. Let us face it, the time when the liturgy was written, our ancestors knew every nuance and overtone of every single sentence of the Bible, the way in which in the medieval ages, at the Globe Theatre in Stratford-on-Avon in England, every classical allusion was understood by the simplest man and woman who paid their penny to go in and hear Macbeth, Hamlet, and A Gentleman from Verona, and whatever. That is to say, we've lost that capacity today, but we have to remember the kind of context. In other words, the full impact of the Bible can only be understood when it's used in liturgy the way Shakespeare or Milton. We live in an age which is not acquainted today with those classical allusions, who don't know from Pyramus and Thisbe and the rest. But for a culture where these were all lively references, an allusion made a whole sentence come alive. Now let me ask the congregation, this is not a rhetorical question, I'm asking you to say, what is the basic thrust of these 3 sentences, of course, from the standpoint of the perspectives? What is the first thing that is being done as people enter the house of prayer? Yes? Alan, is that you? Yes. Mazel tov. Stand up. Let's look at you. The father of a new boy. Just look at that. The boy's upstairs. Is he upstairs? We're going to see him in the kiddush? Yes. Terrific, terrific. Please. Is Ellen here too? Yes. Where is she? Oh, she's up there with it. Yes. As you can see, my dear friends, Reconstructionism has not yet learned how to cope with the issue of total equality among the sexes. Alan, please make your point.
What he wants, I'm afraid I can't give it.
Alan, I wish you wouldn't complicate the feminist issue by raising such trivial physiological facts. We'd like to deny some of those realities here. Let's get back to the Matovu. Please, Alan.
The first thing that happens is that the Jewish congregation is separated from other things in the world, other experiences that people have had. It's separated from the Gentile, it's separated from the whole last verse is about all the other terrible things out in the world and the distinction between what's supposed to go on here.
Very good, very interesting. Anybody else have any comment to make on that? The question is, there is some separation, and incidentally it's very curious. Precisely a prayer which begins with words of Gentiles, of a Gentile, Bilam, we shouldn't get we shouldn't misunderstand it. The classical Jewish vision is that there is no shame in saying Jews and Gentiles are different. Classically, Judaism then and today, and I include Reconstructionism, at least as understood by me and in this congregation, has never regarded it as an insult to Gentile to be a Gentile and a Jew to be a Jew. The rabbinic tradition even had within it the possibility of accepting the concept that salvation was for righteous Gentiles also, which was not possible for the church, even its most latest developments. The church said very unequivocally, extra ecclesiam nulla salus, no salvation outside the church. As long ago as the period of the Pharisees, 2,000 years ago, salvation was for Gentiles if they lived according to a basic ethical sense, the so-called laws of Noah. But precisely because it begins with the verse of a Gentile, the psalm, the prayer as a whole indicates that we are, as Jews here, there is a way for Gentiles to be converted to becoming Jewish. Conversion can take place, and once they become converted, they are welcomed as full Jews in every sense of the word. We trace their lineage back to Abraham and Ruth in the case of a man and a woman. But something else is going on here. Jack.
It may have something to do with the principle of kavanah, which is to prepare oneself and get oneself in a state of honest meditation before beginning really getting into the heart.
Yes? Joel? Very good, Joel. There's a phrase in the book of Mishlei, Yahalel Chazar v'alpicha nochri v'al. Let a stranger praise you and not yourself. Let a foreigner do it. Don't let the words come forth from your own mouth. But I don't think we're there yet. I think anybody else, please. Our visitors are more than welcome to participate. I'm asking in terms of the, yes.
Well, if a stranger praises you, you are indeed worthy of praise.
Yes, but you're still constant, yes.
It says in one of the Psalms, the Lord has done great things with these. Strangers acknowledge that we are great.
That's a very interesting point that you just raised. Just one moment, I want to check on it. I know where it comes from. You just quoted a verse from the Shir HaMa'alot, Higdil Adonai La'asot Imanu. 1 second, we'll have the text and we'll see what they say there, and we'll get back to our point. When the Lord restored the prosperity of Zion, we were like unto them that dream. Then was our mouth filled with laughter, and our tongue with exultation. Then said they among the nations, thank you, sir, marvelous example. Then said they among the nations, Az Yomru Va Goyim, the Goyim said it. Higdil Adonai La'asot Im Eleh. It's very interesting, by the way, that Jews to this day, we're much happier if we can get some kind of a hashkocha, some kind of an approval from a non-Jewish source. Somehow, when it's not as bad now as it used to be, but 50 or 100 years ago, if you think back, we felt a little uncomfortable, even with great Jews. But when a non-Jew said something about us, a distinguished non-Jew, as a matter of fact, that principle is manifest throughout Dr. Hertz's commentary on this Chumash. If ever Dr. Hertz can find somebody like Gibbons or Thackeray or some really outstanding non-Jewish author to say something nice about the Jew, you can feel his Victorian blood boiling with pride. So that's an excellent example, but I still think that a point is being missed. I asked you to be aware that each verse has a resonance. Let me put it to you this way. It's part of the whole understanding, I understand, of modern symbolism in poetry and linguistics. The understanding that when a word comes forward on the written page, a word, we associate that word with all the other uses of the word which we have experienced. And the richness of poetry is precisely because the poet knows how to use words which have an unconscious, which have a patina. Fagel.
The one word that seems to me in all three lines was the word for house, whether it's ohalecha or beitecha. And you're coming into a house signifies safety.
Yes, but I still don't think that's enough. Yes. Shell.
From the two Psalms you read, the context there is the psalmist is contrasting himself as a person striving to be truthful and sincere with the others who are deceitful, insincere, dishonest. And based on what you've said, I gather the attempt here is to evoke that context by citation of these verses, the notion that the worshiper is striving to be honest. I would say that as I was listening to you read those Psalms, there was something that must strike us as a bit smug and self-righteous in good part. The psalmist is ready to judge himself as being sincere and the other guys as deceitful, except for a couple of redeeming phrases where he says, try me, examine my reins, and so on. So that even though he's convinced in a way that he is honest, he's not all that certain, and he asks God to make sure that he really is as sincere as he wants to be.
Yes.
Following up, I think Jack Snyder hit the nail on the head. It's an essential preliminary to the kind of kavanah that
Yes. That's beautiful, Shell. You see, what we've overlooked thus far is what I would call the paranoia in those Psalms. Certainly in the Psalms, not necessarily in the book of Numbers. I mean, this guy has so many enemies. So many people hate him. Here we have a marvelous example of where in the Psalms, private paranoia becomes public piety. Because you see, whoever wrote the Psalm originally clearly was thinking of himself. But what happened was, the people who heard this Psalm liked it. And so what they did was, they made it for public use. Most of the prayers that we have in the synagogue service originally were written by individuals for their own personal needs, and then were claimed by the community at large. For example, the Aleinu prayer was written by an individual. The Elohai Neshama was written by an individual. Any number of prayers were written. The prayer that we just recited this morning, announcing the new moon of Adar, the Yiratzon, was also written by the Rab, Abba Arika, the 2nd century post-Christian scholar Rab, the same one responsible for the threefold Malchiot Zichronot Shofarot service on the New Year. There's paranoia here. But there's also this contrast, and I think Shelley's being very charitable. Yes, there's always the danger when people say that they are being sincere, that they're not. And we always have to say, but I may be wrong. And that's what the psalmist does on some level. And then brings in a non-Jewish observer to say, look, the Jews do this. It's not self-serving. We brought in a stranger to say they're okay. It seems to me the thrust of this prayer is a challenge to honesty and integrity. It's a challenge to describe reality as it is. It's a challenge not to deny. It's a challenge to pursue ethical insights and ethical values regardless of the consequences, wherever the chips fall. This is the opening thrust of the service on Sabbath morning. Now, obviously, we have no time this morning to go into the rest of the service in great detail, although give me the chance. I would like to say this. Up to this point, the service has been traditional. We have followed the tradition of our ancestors. A rabbi who lived 2,000 years ago, who walked in here this morning, would not understand a word of English, but would watch what was going on and on some inchoate level feel a sense of continuity and community with what we are doing today, basing ourselves on a text. Two things I wanted to happen here this morning. I wanted you to have the experience. I am of those who believe that all the cookbooks in the world don't add up to one good meal. And I have made it a habit over the years not to talk about the SAJ or Reconstructionism, except to people who have had or today are having an actual experience of a worship service with us. Now, I don't want to badmouth anything that happens in other synagogues up and down the country. Unfortunately, I'm not able to visit them because I'm working on Saturdays. I was brought up Orthodox myself, and there were many things in the Orthodox background that I came from that I found incompatible. I couldn't live with them. I don't want to go into that right now. One of the things we pride ourselves on here is our attempt to respect the past, but also take the modern into consideration, which is what I've been trying to do in my discussion this morning. We treat the past with respect because we believe that those sacred texts have a special quality to them. I said before, they are the central sacred myths of our people. And in a very real sense, the Torah, the very nucleus of the Tanakh, the Bible, the first third of our sacred script, is a Jewish dream. That's why commentary on it is infinite. The Torah is a Jewish dream. It is a Jewish dream. It partakes of all the qualities of a dream. There are parts of the Torah which we have to blink at because they don't seem to fit into what we know of real life. I could mention any number of chapters. The binding of Isaac on Mount Moriah reads like a dream. Many of the questions that we ask are meaningless because to ask certain kinds of questions of a dream is meaningless. The very essence of the dream is that it dresses up or translates what it is really about into something else which we can try to understand. The heart, the core, you can never reach. There's no way of getting to the depths of any single dream that any human being has ever had. How much less can we ever hope to fathom the depths of this dream of our people? Obviously, there's no such thing as a collectivity that dreams. Individuals dream, in the same way that individuals suffer from paranoia and write psalms such as the ones we read this morning. But if there is a quality in what they have created which captures the imagination of the men and women in their environments, then those people who hear this psalm written by the individual or who hear of this dream or this fantasy or this wish dreamed by the individual, join with the person who had it, and the dream becomes a shared dream. The fantasy becomes a shared fantasy. And we are then able to talk about a collective myth, a collective dream, and a collective experience. I don't know what people experience when they come to the SAJ on Saturday morning. I don't know what I experience all the time. Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing here. So certainly I can understand why you don't know what you're doing here. What is conveyed? What do people hear? What do people not hear? What part of the service offended? What part of the service moved? What part of the service bored? What subtle moment or flash or trace or echo of transcendence was or was not heard? There is an element of the dream about an act of worship. We are re-immersing ourselves on one level into a dream that our ancestors had at a particular point in their history, a unique dream. Because of all the peoples in the world, they were faced with the problem of living as a people without military means of support. That's the uniqueness of our ancestors. Of all the ancient peoples in the world, they were the only people that wanted to survive without the normal trappings of power. That's where that particular dream came from. I wanted you to be here, and I'm enormously grateful to you for coming here this morning. I'm particularly addressing myself to the people who came here for the first time. First of all, it must have been quite scary. From what I hear of the membership committee, people say to their friends, having been here for some time, would you like to come with me to shul on Saturday morning? The person to whom that question is said looks at the original person, even though they may have known them for 30 years, as if they've just taken leave of their senses. This has nothing to do with us. The idea that any intelligent person would want to spend Saturday morning in synagogue is something that's a puzzlement. I'm not saying that no people who go to Orthodox synagogues are intelligent. I'm talking about the rank and file people of whom I hear when their friends say, hey, I went to synagogue on West 86th Street, would you like to join me in shul? They look as if to say, are you feeling all right? Are you sure you're feeling all right? And time and again, to the point when we're tired of hearing it, people who've come utterly reluctantly to this place, convinced they were going to dislike every minute of it. We've tried to present ourselves to you this morning, warts and all. I have done nothing differently from what I do every single week. The meal is important, not the recipe. You can have all the recipe books on a desert island, but if you don't have the ingredients, you'll starve. And a well-cooked meal is more important than 6 PhDs in how to cook. We all know that. Why should it be different in the realm of religion? You don't really believe what Craig Claiborne says about any place until you've eaten there yourself. And how often does it take place that there is a vast discrepancy between what Craig Claiborne ate and what you're offered? Same thing is true of movies. How often have the critics been wrong? How many times can you really trust Pauline Kael? Most, actually, most. Most. Remarkable lady, remarkable lady. I still think she was right about Shoot the Moon. Everybody tells me I'm wrong, but I'm convinced that Pauline Kael and I am right about Shoot the Moon. Ta'amu uru'u ki tov Adonai. Taste and see that the Lord is good. We invited you here this morning to continue the culinary image for a Vorspeise, for an hors d'oeuvre. The hors d'oeuvre consists of everything that you've experienced. Traditional prayers, singing. We believe it's important to sing together. The words that we sang were in Hebrew. We did not sing them literally. We don't believe in a supernatural God who protects his favorites from their enemies. Life is a random run, and the wicked and the righteous suffer equally. Sometimes the righteous seem to suffer more than the wicked. They're more sensitive. We quote with reverence where we come from, because our ancestors, unencumbered by they were with the blessings of civilization as we know it, were able to think a little more clearly on spiritual matters after the fashion of somebody who's diseased in one area of his body, who plays the violin that much more sweetly. Or one who is deficient in one sense, who develops another sense that much more sensitively. By the same token, our ancestors, bereft of the normal trappings of sovereignty, developed a spiritual sovereignty and built a kingdom in heaven. A Vorspeise, the davening, was part of that, one of the ingredients. The quality of our cantors singing. We've hired a new shamash this year. The very quality of what went into it. The role, the person that he follows. All these are emotions and nostalgias that you can't possibly hope to experience today. But if you stay with us, you too will feel some of the nostalgia many of us had today when I mentioned the name of Leonard Bloom, a name which I hope will be associated for many years to come with this institution. Growth for both him and for us. You came this morning, you stumbled in when a new chapter was being opened in the life of the synagogue. And of course my words, words of groping, words of endeavoring to understand, words in which I try to move out of this reverence to the past in one sense and move into a reverence for the past, which is the highest form of reverence, the reverence to criticize and disagree, which I invite the congregation to do here with me every week. It has to be an informed disagreement. It has to be an intelligent criticism. We don't just want people to shoot their mouths off because somebody forgot to give them a cup of tea in the social hall. It's a system of tea party or something of that order. It has to be an informed disagreement. We can agree to disagree with respect. There are no definitive answers given here. I have no salvation to offer those of you who are here for the first time, nor has Reconstructionism. Reconstructionism is a general theory about human beings in their relationship to the sacred, of which Jewish Reconstructionism is a particular application. It is religion without supernaturalism. It claims that religion evolves naturally in the life of peoples, and that there are good religions and bad religions, and it is the quality of the people that determines whether it is good or bad. And that religion involves a respect of the past, heroes, objects, texts, events, and days, such as the day which is today. And the sum total of the respect for the sacred in its past quality, but above all in the wrestling with it in which we try to make it speak to us today, is all part of what we understand as being a Jew first and a Reconstructionist second. It links us with Jews all over the world, our brethren in Soviet Russia, our brethren in South America, our brethren in Israel. Am Yisrael Chai, one Jewish people. Wherever the Jew is, he and she is called upon to do their utmost to advance the meaning and purpose of that Jewish existence. There was no way in which we could convey to you conceptually what we are trying to convey to you. And that is why, more importantly than anything that I have said, the way that I have said what I have said, the manner in which I have said what I have said, the way in which people listen, the way the members of the congregation will greet each other at Kiddush, the way the service took place. This is what I draw your attention to. The experience. We hope you'll come back for more. And Jack Levithan and his gallant crew will be only too happy to answer any further, more specific questions. We rise for Aleinu on page 194.